this is just a taste of everything that we are going to be learning today as we explore downtown, and we will relay the most important, useful, and interesting details for you guys about the history of the city. Good morning, guys. We are here in the center of Guadalajara learning about the history and the beginnings of the city from our new friend Eduardo, who knows a lot about architecture and the general history of Mexico and specifically this city.
We're here in Centro Historico by Kiosco here. Every city in Mexico, at least the ones that were founded by the Spaniards, has one of these.
Eduardo was also telling us that in addition to this kiosco at the very center of the city, you're also going to have what is behind us, a cathedral, and then what is to the left of us here, which is the government building?
Yeah, the governor of the state.
Office of the governor, and then also the House of the Founders, which is just that away.
But the House of the Founders has since been destroyed.
Yeah, they have been destroyed. That occurred 500 years ago.
Okay.
So, and now there are more buildings that have replaced that.
Well, you were saying the architecture of them is has Baroque influences from Europe.
So the Spanish discovered Greek manuscripts long ago. Those said that cities should be built on a grid. That's what they followed here in Mexico when they were conquering. The cities they built here in Mexico were built with a grid shape with a similar kiosco, cathedral, government building, House of the Founders. So this kiosco here is probably the most ornate one we've seen in Mexico. There's so many details on it. And this was actually given to the Mexican government by the French at the beginning of the 20th century.
So this is just a taste of everything that we are going to be learning today as we explore downtown, and we will relay the most important, useful, and interesting details for you guys about the history of the city. So we are here right now in Plaza Liberacion, right in front of a statue of Miguel Hidalgo, which we have gone down the street in Guadalajara called Miguel Hidalgo like 100 times and never ever knew the history behind it.
That's something that's very common here in Mexico, is to name streets after important people in the history of the country.
So we were just learning that Miguel Hidalgo was a priest who was very influential in abolishing slavery initially, and this was 60 years before Abraham Lincoln did the same thing in the US. But as far as here in Mexico, apparently it was never actually legal, but it was still practiced, so he made sure that that was done for completely, and that's why, of course, we are standing in front of a statue acknowledging him right now.
He led the Independence Army around 1810.
The next thing we're learning here, which I think is pretty interesting, is that around the time that slavery was being officially abolished and there was a lot of transfer of power where Mexico wanted to be free of the control of Spain, it wasn't very structured. It was just that people decided we don't want to be under the thumb of Spain's rule or control anymore, so we're just going to take over the power and we're going to make these changes ourselves. But it wasn't a specific like president or emperor or
it was a time of instability. So someone was able to just say, okay, I'm in charge now.
And then people sort of just went along with it.
Basically, that's how you go here.
So here we stand in Plaza Liberacion. The cathedral is behind me now, and you have some important buildings around here. Like, this is the most important building of the executive branch of government in Guadalajara. Over here, the most important building of the judicial branch and the legislative branch. And here's a theater and a museum. Around in 1960, this plaza was built. It used to look like old buildings behind me here, but now we have a couple fountains. You have the very popular Guadalajara sign that everyone likes to take a picture in front of.
And this was all around the time of 1960 that
like
this was the plaza.
In the modern era, they want to modernize the city center, so they destroyed a lot of buildings and built plazas and avenues.
Okay, and that was partly because they wanted cars to be able to move
Yes,
through, and then
definitely.
also just to revitalize, sort of. Or,
Yeah.
Okay.
Did that happen with a lot of cities in Mexico?
Yes, but Guadalajara was the most destroyed of all of them.
So we are standing in front of another very old, very awesome building built in the 1860s, and this is Teatro de Collado.
Yes.
Teatro de Gollado. And in contrast to some of the other buildings which have Baroque style, this has Greek architecture and neoclassic. So a whole lot of mix of different styles here, And what plays here is the Jalisco
Philharmonic Orchestra.
Philharmonic Orchestra. Eduardo was sharing that you can get discounted tickets a lot of times, or they sometimes do free, but it would be about 200 pesos to sit in the very front row if you wanted to come see them play.
So right now I'm standing in front of Templo de San Agustin, or St. Augustine Temple. And this building is one of the oldest here in Guadalajara, not quite the oldest, it's about 300 or 400 years old. So now I'm standing in front of a statue of Beatriz Hernandez, who was a Spanish woman and the one responsible for founding Guadalajara. And that was after 3 other failed attempts by other people to found the city.
In various locations that they could not agree on.
Rumor has it that, well, it is a fact that the law said you needed 100 people to found a city. And,
in agreement over...
Yeah, and rumor has it that she didn't have 100 people, so she rounded up some cows and chickens and animals and was like, okay, we have 100 now.
This is good enough. We're doing it here. Not in the mountains, not in the north, we're doing it here. So right now we're standing in front of Plaza Fundadores, which is a representation of the 50 different families from Spain that founded Guadalajara. The thing that I think I found the most interesting is that the name itself, Guadalajara, came from the influence of the Arab language, and it was originally Guadalajara, which is because either it reminded them of a river in Spain or because of the river San Juan de Dios, San Juan de Dios, that originally ran through Guadalajara.
And Guadalajara means river that go across rocks.
So I thought that was fascinating. I don't think I've ever learned where actually the name of any city ever. I've never learned that where any city's name actually came from. And yet I still don't know how to actually pronounce it. We'll get there eventually.
Guadalajara.
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 Guadalajara. One day.
So right now we are standing by this fountain on Calzada Independencia. In the early 1900s, this actually used to be a river flowing right here, San Juan de Dios, but then they put the river into a tube. What's the word for that in Spanish?
Entubar.
I don't think there's a word for that in English.
That's because that occurred in Mexico in many rivers. I mean, in Mexico City was full of rivers, and they put in a tube all of them.
To control them and be able to manage
because they were not that big also, neither, so they could do that.
So historically in Guadalajara, on the east side of Calzada Independencia was where the indigenous people lived generally, and it was a less wealthy area. And on the west side of it, it was where the Spanish were living, and they were the wealthier people at the time. That still remains true to this day to an extent. On the east side, it tends to be less wealthy, and on the west side, more wealthy. But there are exceptions to the rule today, though.
We're still in the same spot as before, where we were talking about the river, which is now a tunnel going underneath and dividing the city. Behind us, we have Puente la Inmolación. Impermeabilización. Inmolación de Quetzalcoatl. Okay, we're gonna call that good. And this has a lot of interesting history. There's a story behind it that is from Aztec origins, that there was a god of light that sacrificed himself so that the world could have light. So that is the representation here. You have in the middle a snake, which actually does not have a head, because the sculptor who made it made the head out of completely solid bronze, and it became too heavy for the ground here to support it. So now it is over here.
Because the ground is hollow underneath.
Yeah, it's over the avenue.
There's a road going under here, and it was too heavy to put right in the middle, so it's over here on solid ground. And there's 4 of these smaller statues surrounding this big thing in the middle. Each one of them represents a snake with feathers on it. So if you see the Guadalajara flag or the Jalisco flag, you'll see it has this coat of arms with 2 lions and a tree. This coat of arms was given to the city by King Carlos V of Spain. He was recognizing the village as an official city. So we are here at La Rotunda de Hombres Ilustres. Well, that was the old name, but it's basically a circle with statues of some of the most important people here in the history of Guadalajara. But
like architects, painters, engineers,
writers, humanitarians and such. But they said, hey, we can't have a name that, because that's saying it's all men, and now there are women here. So they changed it to Rotunda de los Jaliscienses Ilustres instead of Hombres Ilustres.
So people from Jalisco.
People from the state of Jalisco, exactly. They were cremated and some of their remains are here in the center.
For the majority of this time, we've been focusing on the history and how Guadalajara got its start and what components helped build the city and the important buildings here. But what we just learned is something very cool, and that is what is to come for the future. And approximately 50 years ago, this street that we're standing on right now was created so that cars and buses and everything could go through. But more recently, the powers that be decided, nope, we're going to take that away. This is going to be a pedestrian avenue. And we're standing on
Calle Alcalde.
Fray Antonio Alcalde.
me and names, my goodness. And so this is supposed to be, in the coming years, similar to Avenida Chapultepec, where it has probably a lot of restaurants and a lot of things happening.
And sculptures and fountains and a really popular tourist place.
So it's not much to see right now because there's a lot of construction going on, but that is what this is going to be in the future, so another cool thing to look forward to in the city.
And it's interesting that just 50 years ago they destroyed a bunch of buildings and stuff to make it so cars
modern
can drive down here, and now, right now, they
abort mission!
took cars
Taking
away.
it away.
And now it's once again for pedestrians.
Hope you guys enjoyed these details that we shared with you today. If we got anything wrong, hopefully we didn't, just let us know down in the comments. That way we can share that with other people so we get all the facts straight. We definitely butchered so many of the names. Huge apologies for that.
If you know any other fun facts about the city of any of the places we visited, please let us know.
So if you like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up.
And subscribe to our channel.
We put out more videos just like this about Guadalajara and our travels in Mexico. And gong that bell so you get notified every time we put out a new video. Before you go, big thank you to Eduardo for giving us all these great details about the history of the city and taking us around. He reached out to us recently and wanted to share some more about the city with us, and we basically didn't know any of this. So this was really, really cool to find out more of the roots and the history of Guadalajara.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye guys.